Good day, everyone. Let me begin with a quick scenario. Imagine you are a project manager and you sign a supply contract for 500,000 ringgit Malaysia worth of materials. Halfway through, the supplier refuses to deliver and claims that the contract is not valid. What protects you? What tells the court who is right and who is wrong? So the answer will lies in what we are going to learn today, the Contract Act 1950 and Malaysian employment laws, the two pillars that govern almost everything we do in project management. So this is the learning outcome. So at the end of the discussions, all of us should be able to acquire abilities to explain the Contract Act 1950, to discuss the labor and employment laws. Okay, so let's start simple. The Contract Act 1950 says a contract is an agreement enforceable by law. You can't enforce a promise unless the law recognizes it. The moment an agreement becomes legally binding, it becomes a contract. And once it becomes a contract, both parties must follow it. The act is not Malaysian in origin. It comes from the Indian Contract Act 1872, which itself was built on English classical contract law. And why does that matter? Okay, because the contract law we use today still carry the philosophy of freedom of contract, sanctity of promises, minimal government's interference, and this creates predictable rules for businesses and for project managers like you. So one of the unique features in Malaysia is this: if the Contract Act is silent, we refer to English law through the Civil Law Act 1956. But here's the twist. Different states apply English law differently. So for example, Peninsular Malaysia, except Penang and Malacca, we only apply English law as it existed in 1956. For Penang, Malacca, and also Sabah, Sarawak, we apply English law as it develops today. So a case of in Penang may follow a 2023 English decision, which a similar case in Selangor may not. So this is why the lawyers and judges must know which region the dispute actually happens in. Okay, so now let's highlight two very important ideas for your exams and real world work. In terms of considerations, a contract must have something of value exchange. But the law says consideration only needs to be sufficient, not adequate. Meaning that it can be 1 ringgit, it can be your time, it can be a promises. As long as some value is given, the court doesn't judge whether it's fair. So that's why a 1 ringgit Malaysia house transfer can be valid unless there's threat or court issues. Second is the freedom of contract. Courts prefer not to interfere, but if both parties agree freely, courts will enforce it even if it's a bad bargain. This reinforces your responsibility as project managers to read contracts properly. All right, now let's shift to the second half of today's learning, Employment Act 1955. Why does this law actually matters to project managers like you and me? Because you hire workers, you manage the teams, you process claims, you approve overtime, you handle the dispute. So if you ever make a mistake, these consequences can be legally serious. Okay, so let me highlight 5 Employment Act rules that you must always remember. First is the Section 7. Terms less favorable than the Act are void. Meaning that if your contract offers less benefit than the Act, the term is automatically invalid. Second, in terms of Section 19, the wages must be paid by the 7th day, not 14, not end of month, no negotiations, but 7 days maximum. In Section 10, employment's contract must be writing for more than 1 month. This to protect both employer and employee. Leave entitlements, the annual leave will be 8, 12, 16 days, depending on the tenure. The sick leave will be 14, 18, 22 days. Hospitalizations will be 60 days. And maternity will actually takes about 60 days pay leave, 19 weeks with amendments. Singapore style is not Malaysia law yet. For the terminations and notice period, the minimum notice will be less than 2 years, will be 4 weeks. 2 to 5 years will be 6 weeks, and 5 years will be 8 weeks. Okay, so here are the 3 mistakes that company make all the time, and you must try to avoid them. First, probationers have no rights. Okay, it's not true. They can claim unfair dismissal under the Industrial Relations Act. Mistake number 2 is public holiday doesn't matter. They do. Working on public holiday have to be triple pay. Overtime is company policy. No. Overtime is decided by law, not policy, and OT must be paid at 1.5 times hourly rate. So when we become project managers, understanding these rules will protect you from any costly labor dispute. Okay, so let me just wrap up all the 3 big takeaways. So Contract Act 1950 ensures agreements are enforceable and protects freedom of contract. Civil Law Act 1956 determines when English law fills the gap, and this changes depending on the state. Employment Act 1955 protect workers and guides employers on wages, leave, overtime, probations, and terminations. So if you master these laws, you'll be able to lead project confidently, protect your organizations, and make legally sound decisions. Thank you, and I hope this gives you a clearer and more practical understanding of Malaysian law in project management. Thank you.